John Stuart Mill wrote about minority rights and majority, privilege or whatever. He wrote about the two horns of the dilemma, about how do you make the right choice in a really tough situation, or the fact that in some situations, no matter what choice is made, somebody will be hurt by it. And he discussed limiting harm and things like that. As a fan of tokusatsu, I watch people fighting. I watch violence on a regular basis. Depending on what kind of week it is, sometimes it's once a week, twice a week, maybe even 3 times a week, who knows. And typically, the way that tokusatsu frames it all, it's heroic fighters or heroes who are trying to stop evil villains, good heroes trying to stop evil villains from hurting innocent people. But that's not something reflected in the tokusatsu community all the time, and that's something I want to discuss right now. This is MJ. I love tokusatsu, and I thought I really liked the community around tokusatsu, but I'm not sure I do anymore, and that's actually the case that I pulled back from it back during Gaim, possibly Drive, and the reason I did that, well, that's not what's important right now, but I don't think I'm going to make myself any friends right now by saying what I have to say, and that's okay because I believe in free speech. I believe it's bad when social norms have a chilling effect on free speech, and I would not attack anybody physically for saying something, but somebody who would attack somebody physically for saying something, or who would advocate attacking somebody physically for saying something, I believe is the same type of person who will malign me, smear me, if this even rises to their attention. And I am not looking for an attack vector. I'm not looking to make enemies. I have a concern that I will make enemies or make myself odious in the tokusatsu community by saying what I'm saying here. But I think I have to stand on the principle, and I have to, I think, much like Kamen Rider does on a regular basis, or at least the Showa classic riders would stand against a hateful, malignant, or malefic army bent on destruction, bent on my destruction possibly because I dare say something that they might not disagree with, or they do disagree with. And here it is. This writer kicks fascists and punch Nazis thing is BS, and it's wrong, and it's at least classy and or classless and tacky and tactless, and it patting yourself on the back for hating Nazis is stupid because most people hate Nazis. If you look at statistics, the amount of actual Nazis, or literal Nazis there are in the world, and I don't mean quote unquote literal Nazis, I mean people who are actually Nazis or supporters of them and advocates of their ideology, is super low in the US, across the globe. In Germany, if you are a Nazi sympathizer, they have laws against that will punish you. Anyway, it's very irritating to me. It's very upsetting to see these people rallying around the fact that the president is a Nazi, the United States is basically Nazi Germany, and that all these terrible things are happening. And I'm against the war state. I'm against the empire. I'm against many of the bad policies that Trump has made, but I'm against many of the bad policies that Obama made, that Bush made, that Clinton made. In King of Hearts, Queen of Sorrows, my G Gundam podcast and review series, I've talked a bunch about how much I hate the American empire and the evils that it has done. But it's been doing those evils for decades, guys. And I don't see people who are calling for punching Nazis also calling for punching their own state in the face for their state's part. I believe the person who made this punch Nazis thing and this this writer kicks fascist thing is living in the UK, and I know that the US and the UK are both selling arms to Saudi Arabia to inflict the war on Yemen, which is something that I have advocated against on Twitter, on Facebook, publicly to my family members and people I know. One of my friends jokingly called me a hippie previously when I was petitioning people to call their representative and leave a message with them urging them to act in Congress to stop the war in Yemen. So if you want to assail me for being a bigot or a racist or something because I think that you're being a jerk and rude and unkind and a fool for advocating punching the mythical Nazi and kicking the mythical fascist that you make up as a boogeyman for you, I've got a good record on this stuff. And I'm wanting to have a conversation. I'm not wanting to start a fight. I'm not wanting to start a beef. But I just need to lay that out there, that I would have, kicked or punched an actual fascist or Nazi. And I wouldn't, I don't know what you would have done at the time. But I bet you would have been conscripted, so you'd have had to as well. I need to pause for a moment. My real problem with this idea of punching Nazis and kicking fascists is that the slander or, people are wrongly labeled Nazis and fascists all the time. It leads to terrible violence. It leads to innocent people being attacked. There was an Antifa guy a guy who sided with Antifa who happened to have an American flag with him. He was angry that Americans weren't living up to the flag, and he was a supporter of Antifa, and then they beat him. There was a Jewish man coming out of, I can't remember where it was, but he was mistaken as being a Nazi or a Patriot Prayer guy or whatever, and Antifa beat him. So these guys who talk about how much they hate Nazis, these guys and girls, gals, them, they, whatever, who talk so much about how they are going to bash the fascists and how they are going to protect the marginalized people, ended up attacking one of these so-called marginalized people that they wanted to defend, or that they claim that they are defending in their rhetoric. And when we stoop to the level of dehumanizing others, I think we become the villains. And if you if you don't get that when you're watching Kamen Rider, I don't know what show you think you're watching. Kamen Rider is a victim of if you want to go back to Takeshi Hongo, in his story he's the victim of this I don't know if you want to call it crypto-fascist remnants of the Nazi regime, this group who abducts people and brainwashes them and turns them into servants of this, one great leader above them all. But whenever he fights those guys, he's fighting them when they're actively hurting people. He never, the way the stories are framed, there are always innocent people being attacked and hurt and harmed before the writer transforms and attacks them and kicks them till they explode. That's the example. The key idea there, that you should, especially if you've been hurt, especially if you have empathy for others, do everything you can to protect them and stop them from being harmed by evil forces, is right and true and just. But Kamen Rider doesn't just walk around claiming that someone is is Shocker or Golgum and then attacking them. The writer waits to see what's going on. They stumble across a situation, then they get suspicious. They find out, when the villains clearly, announce themselves, and then they attack. And it's a pretty simple example to follow, and I don't understand why you don't get it. And I guess I want to ask why you think it's okay to advocate for violence with this stuff and to try to make money selling stickers and pins off of stuff that's advocating for violence as well, that you would encourage people to attack fascists and so-called Nazis by you, because they're people that have different opinions from you. And I guess I'd be interested to know how many of you who are anti-fascist are on the side of the protesters in Hong Kong. Do you want the fascist or the quasi-fascist Chinese government to trample over the rights of the people there? Because in America, at least, I don't hear many people calling to support Hong Kong, and I don't want us to get involved there. I just think it's a terrible situation what's going on, and I just find it ironic that the sentiment people seem to have opinions that switch depending on how good it will make them look to the people in their little tribe, I guess, and that's wrong. You should be principled, and that's why I'm willing to, lose friends, to make myself an enemy, to be called a Nazi or a fascist by you, for saying what I have to say here, that we should be tolerant and I don't know, be like Kamen Rider and enable people to be free and live their lives the way they want, until they cross that line and start actually harming people with literal attack and injury. Now, I've kind of lost my way in trying to say this, but I guess, to put it simply, the same person who made this art also posted this comment, that they came into work in a Power Rangers t-shirt and their coworker said, Power Rangers, the most racist show I've ever seen. And they have a Rita Repulsa shocked face as their reaction to that. And then they say, oddly, their issue was with the, quote, white ranger being the leader, end quote, which didn't happen until, what, season 3 anyway? More than anything. And then the person says, yeah, fine, I know MMPR had some casting issues, but, like, there's over 2 decades of other seasons, like, question mark, like, what's your point? Why are you bothering? I have a question for you, mate. Should this coworker of yours, this coworker of yours, shouldn't they have just punched you or kicked you in the face? Because you're a Nazi. You're a white supremacist. You are a supporter and an advocate of Power Rangers, the most racist show they've ever seen. Now, if they're a true ally of justice, shouldn't they attack you physically because of how unjust you are? That's the mentality that you're fostering with this BS. And that's what I want to speak out against, because it's foolish to advocate for a world where anybody has an excuse to turn on anybody and attack them for anything, as long as they say that they thought that they were probably a Nazi or a racist or anything else negative that they want to smear them with. That's all I have to say about that. Just to clarify, that's the world you want to live in. That's the world you're creating. That's not the world I'm creating. In my world, you get to be protected, or at least you get to be free to wear that shirt and not have to worry about what the repercussions of it might be. But that's not what you want. Anyway, check out MJMunoz.com for more of my work. I'm currently reviewing Spider-Man comics and write original fiction that you can find there. I'm also participating in Toku-tember, making tokusatsu-inspired art for the month of September. I'm an aspiring author who will gladly accept your financial support through coffee. MJ Loves Toku can be found on YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and MJMunoz.com. It's on there somewhere. Look in the podcast section. Relevant links are in the show notes. I've got a link to Swinging Through Comics there. And I'm going to do that final Heisei Generations yada 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 that I've had sitting on my phone for like a month, but I haven't reviewed because I was reviewing all this other Kamen Rider stuff, and then finishing up my G Gundam review, which you can also find on YouTube on the MJ Loves Toku channel, and I believe that's what it's going to be called. It'll be changed by the time this goes up. And what else? You can check me out during Toku-tember, like I said. And if you want to have a conversation about this whole thing, I'd be happy to do that. And I didn't want to be mad, and I didn't want to be a jerk, and I almost confronted this person, but I thought, you know what? The point is, I'm more concerned about the point. I'm less concerned because I don't know that I would be able to convince this person, so why waste my energy, I suppose? Anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, last thing. I have a little tagline I came up with. You don't have to shout henshin to be a hero. And I like that. Anyway, so if you had a good time, like and share this to help me grow. And subscribe and ring that bell to keep up with me in my latest quest to check out all the tokusatsu and review it. Take care, folks.